For the following interview, Brett Baer, official host of the America Business Forum, takes the stage.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to day 2 of the America Business Forum here in Miami. Yesterday, set a remarkable tone. The conversations that challenged us reminded us why this gathering has become a leading forum for business and leadership in the world. Today, we keep that momentum going with another extraordinary lineup of speakers and discussions that look toward the future, toward innovation, investment, and ideas that move the world forward. So, with that, let's get started.
America Business Forum proudly presents Eric Schmidt, former CEO and chairman of Google, chair and CEO of Relativity Space. Welcome to America Business Forum.
We forget that humans come first.
He saw the future long before it arrived. A pioneer who shaped a large part of our digital age, who turned algorithms into revolution and technology into global transformation. Former CEO and chairman of Google, and now a global leader in the artificial intelligence industry. Tonight, America Business Forum presents Eric Schmidt. For the following interview, Francis Suarez, mayor of the city of Miami, takes the stage of America Business Forum.
He's unflappable. He didn't even move when the smoke went up. So Eric, this is the second time that I have the privilege to be able to interview you. So I'm very excited about this.
By the way, Mayor, I have to interrupt. I'm very interested in Shakespeare sonnets, so I just wrote one. It's about you.
Okay.
It's entitled Upon the Excellence of Mayor Suarez.
Please.
When first Miami's helm he took in hand, a city poised 'tween ocean's azure deep and future's promise vast throughout the land, he sowed where others scarce had dared to reap. With vision bold as conquistadors of old, he brought forth commerce, tech, and innovation's art, made Miami shine as cities wrought of gold, and placed our fair metropolis apart. It continues, don't worry.
Okay.
Through tempest's rage and plague's most grievous tests, he stood as a bulwark against adversity's tide, led his citizens with courage in his breast, and made our city known far and wide. So shall his legacy in marble stand, the mayor who raised Miami's fortune grand, Mayor Suarez. This is the kind of stuff we can do with AI.
I was going to say.
It took me about 2 seconds.
Okay, so now you're going to make me tell a story. This is completely off script. So I was asked to open the consulate of Morocco. Now, usually, as you know, Eric, when we go to events, we get talking points, people give us talking points and all that. And so I had not been reading my talking points lately. So I've been telling my staff, why don't you just give me 1 or 2 bullet points wherever I go, and I'll weave a story into it. Well, I go to, open up the consulate of Morocco, and there's only 2 bullet points. Bullet point number 1 is that there's direct flights to Casablanca. Bullet point number 2 is that it's the 3rd consulate in America for Morocco. Not that much to go on, right? So as I'm being introduced, I literally pull my phone out of my pocket, and I have the ChatGPT prompt on the phone, and I speak into the phone.
I would use Gemini.
Of course, I have the Gemini prompt. That's what I meant. Yes, of course, I meant Gemini, of course. I have the Gemini prompt, and I speak clearly into the Gemini prompt. Stand corrected. Know your audience, KYC. So I have the Gemini prompt, and I say, pretend you're the mayor of Miami and you're about to open the Moroccan consulate. And you only have 2 facts. Fact number 1 is there's direct flights to Monaco.
Pretend you're the mayor of Miami.
Pretend you're the mayor of Miami, right? Okay. Fact number 1 is direct flights to Casablanca. Fact number 2, it's the 3rd consulate opening in the US. What would you say? Before they finished introducing me, and before I walked to the stage, Gemini had written this entire speech for me. I read it word for word. People were crying, laughing, hugging me. You know our country so well, Mr. Mayor. How have you known about us so much and so deep? So yes, thank you for that incredible sonnet.
So
true story, by the way.
And one more piece of congratulations, which I'm sure you'll appreciate. No one has ever done an American Business Forum at this scale in America. This is an innovative mayor as well. And I really want you to think about doing this all around America, because business is what we do, and America's growth depends on the kind of things we're talking about today. What's interesting is that about 3.5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, there's a moment in San Francisco where people realized that these models could write, and boy, could they write.
Oh, yeah.
That's a real discovery moment. It's one of those historic moments in history, similar to physics and chemistry and things like that.
It's incredibly disruptive, and I appreciate the comments. And of course, it's a team effort. Nacho, whose vision it was to bring it from Uruguay. Sergio, who's our big investor. Where are you, Sergio? You're here somewhere, I'm sure. He'll be here any minute. Steve, who helped me, my cousin, who helped me put this together. But let's get back to the interview. You know, Eric, you're obviously a world-renowned figure and tech pioneer. Did you have an inkling that you were destined for greatness? What was it about you, about your DNA? Was it your tenacity? I mean, what is the sort of the components of you that made you supersede?
I think the most important thing to say, anyone who's on stage here, start with luck. I was lucky to be born now. I was lucky to be born in America. My parents were academics. I had an awful lot of people who helped get me through the various stages of life. One of the things that we, who are now older, owe the younger people is to give them the same opportunity. Right? It's really important. And I was thinking about what should be a theme for this audience. And everyone in America is obsessed about everything except for one thing, which is the human talent.
That's
and
right.
the human talent of America is why we are exceptional. Focus on humans. Focus on their education and their culture and their development and their curiosity and their energy and their tenacity and so forth, and help them with the various travails that happen in life. Focus on the humans of America. It's the only answer.
You know, you're a great leader. You've been a great mentor to me and friend.
God.
And you're an incredible coach. And I think, and I've read some books on some of the people who coached you. What's the coaching habit that you think you consistently use to raise the level of the team?
So I wrote a book about, so I had a coach. His name was
This is
Bill
the book
Campbell.
I read, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah, that's right. We actually talked about it. I had a coach named Bill Campbell. And when I started at Google, the venture capitalist John Doerr said, "You need a coach." And I said, "I'm a big boy. I've run a lot of companies. I don't need a coach." And he said to me, "Do tennis players have coaches?"
Absolutely.
And I knew he had trapped me, right? Because the answer is, of course, they do, even though they may not be as good as the actual tennis player. Coaches do different things. And so we hired, or retained, if you will, Bill Campbell for free, and became my best friend at the time. And what he coached was not an individual, but a team. And the thing I learned from Bill is, as a CEO, you manage the team. You don't manage the individuals. And you work on the team dynamics, but fundamentally it's a team sport. He was a football coach, and not a particularly good one, but he was an extraordinary human leader. And there's a book, $1 Trillion Coach. If we were to write the book today, he died, unfortunately, some years ago, it would be called the $7 Trillion Coach, because he was the coach for Apple and Google. Think about it.
I think he was a Princeton coach, right?
No.
Yep.
Columbia.
Columbia.
His winning record was terrible.
Like 0-10 or something like that, yeah.
So, but leadership, but I now understand that I needed coaching, my team needed coaching, and the way I manage is I manage as sort of CEO and coach. And you watch what's going on, and you try to get people to work together. And there are various techniques, like tell the people who talk too much to let the people who don't talk as much talk more. I mean, stuff like that.
You know, I also didn't believe that much in coaching, and my coach is probably somewhere here in the audience, Louis Araujo. I don't know if Louis is here somewhere. There he is. There's my coach right there. He's a great guy. So for someone that's starting out in tech, what's sort of the mindset or the practice that you think is going to compound the most over the next decade?
So if you look at success, it's a combination of intelligence, that is, ability to do the work, and grit. And I would add intelligence, grit, and curiosity. When I was young, I was a sponge for everything, because I didn't seem to know anything, or I thought I knew nothing. And the internet had not really been invented yet. It was just getting started. And so we didn't have the resources we have today. If I were a 16 or 18-year-old or 20-year-old, whatever, right now, I would be online all the time just learning, because I would be curious, and I want to know everything. Mayor, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your family. Tell me what you do. How did you get here? What are the problems? And I trained myself to look at businesses and say, how do they work? Right? Like, how does this place work? How did you fund this? What was it your idea? Who did you work with?
Pain.
But that's grit, right? So you have to have the intelligence. I have all sorts of friends who are brilliant who can't get through the day, right? They wake up, they have an idea, they have another idea. Nothing happens with them. It's the people who have an idea that's very clever and they have the tenacity to push it. Those things come from curiosity. Another example, and this, I think, the technology that we're in is so extraordinary, and I'm so excited about it, but there are some things we've lost. One of them is that we've lost is the looking out the window phenomena. And there's some evidence that looking out the window is fundamentally important for curiosity. So here's an example for all of you. When you're leaving here today sometime, turn off your phone, tell everyone who's around you to shut up in a nice way, and look out the window and daydream. That daydream is important too, because that's how the creative thoughts come.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, look, I think for me, failure has always been a great teacher. Pain, as we said. What are the sort of high-quality failures that you've had in your life that you think have sort of permanently changed how you think about the world or how you lead?
I think when you're running stuff, you make lots of mistakes. So I hold myself responsible for not getting ahead. We had the technology to do what Meta is doing now, and we didn't implement it fast enough, right? That's what I hold myself responsible.
Sure.
But in general, if you just keep pushing, it works. And one of the key ideas about success is just keep doing stuff. What happens in organizations, especially if I can be honest, in middle age, is everything becomes sort of normal. And I was interested in the innovation culture of America. Ken Burns is a friend of mine, and I was watching him, and he was asked, "Is America in crisis?" And he said, "Oh, I think it's in perpetual crisis. We've always been disagreeing, and our revolution is the thing." So when you understand that the system is not designed to be static, it's designed to be dynamic, and it's a jump ball, then you can do it. I've consistently been slow to see that if I do self-criticism, and I've consistently assumed that stable systems were always stable. Humans can always change the system if you need to. Figure out a way to change it to make it a better place.
You know, you've run a big company. I'm running a $1.5 billion company, which is the city of Miami with 5,000 employees and 4 labor unions. The decisions that we make and that we've made affect thousands of people. Yeah. How do you deal with doubt in the face of understanding the implications of those decisions and how they impact people?
I was talking to, I've talked to the various presidents that I've had an honor to meet. And when you actually talk to how the president operates, there are moments in a presidency when the president makes a decision where they have no idea what's going to happen, and yet they make the decision anyway. That's, I think, how you have to operate. Obviously not, none of us have that kind of responsibility, thank God. But fundamentally, if it gets to you, it shouldn't be an easy decision. The people who work for you should be able to handle these things. One way to think about it is the really complex problems are ones that you participate in, you lead the team, and you make a bet, and you iterate and iterate and iterate. All success is fundamentally a genius, and then iteration and essentially just constant evolution. And you're always failing, you're always trying things, that didn't work, and so forth. One of the geniuses of America is that people who can go bankrupt can be rehired and become hugely successful. Many of my favorite entrepreneurs, the first I didn't work, second I didn't work, the third I didn't work, and the fourth, boom, right? So never stop trying.
On a similar note, when a project is deeply uncertain, but potentially transformative, how do you communicate your vision and guide your team through that uncertainty?
What I try to do is I try to frame the question correctly. Usually, if you can ask, so let's start with the basic principle. Don't tell people to do, ask what people want to do, right? But frame the question. Okay, this is what we want to do. What is the best idea? Because frankly, people don't like to be told what to do. They like to be asked, right? And the key leadership is to frame the question or the goal in such a way that everyone kind of gets it. A simple rule is you have to repeat it at least 20 times before people believe you. So I become very repetitive. Another thing I do, which may be going out of favor because nobody uses email anymore, is I'm constantly writing down, this is what I think, this is where we should do, what do you guys think, and so forth. So it's much more interactive. And the strategies evolve. And then you get some great product manager who can brilliantly expose the result of this process. But it fundamentally starts from saying, what is our goal? So we want to win. OK, what does that mean? Another thing I do that works well is I start by saying, where will we be in 5 years? Humans are terrible at predicting past the next 12 months, right? If you force people to say, what will be true in 5 years, you get a very different answer. So here's an example. The cost of AI tokens, that is the delivery of queries, is going down by a factor of 10 every year.
Amazing.
So 5 years, 10 to the fifth, 5 to the, you can do the math. It's a very large number. What happens when the cost of my little sonnet is so cheap, it's just everywhere? Right. All in praise of you, Mayor.
Of course.
What does that mean? Think backward. Almost every business fails to understand the compounding of these technologies.
You know, innovation is often referred to as managed chaos. Yeah. How do you explain that sort of juxtaposition, that tension between managing and something that's somewhat organized or ordered in chaos?
It has to do with the structure of goals. You want to think a lot about goal alignment. In corporations, it's pretty easy because everybody has stock options, they have a common goal. It's much harder in what you do because there's multiple goals. So if I were you, if I were running the city, which fortunately you're doing and I'm not, I would sit down and say, what are the real goals?
Prioritize.
Right? Healthcare, safety, economic growth, welfare, inward, and I'd measure them. Set the goals, measure them, articulate them, repeat, repeat, repeat.
So how do you protect true innovation from the bureaucracy that inevitably grows around that success and can stifle that same innovation?
In software, which is what I've done from 50 years, which is, I think, largely going away because AI is beginning to write software, my simple rule was that 3 people would invent something new, like the Chrome browser or the Android operating system or so forth, and then it would take 1,000 people to finish it. And I kept thinking, why do we need so many people? And there's this constant problem of every team, engineering team, management team, getting bigger and bigger. You want lean teams. The lesson over and over is lean teams. Another example, I have a rule with the companies I'm running now that if we do new things, you can only have 10 people, you can't have 11. When we go into a new country, you can have 10 people, but not 11. Because I figure 10 people is a group that's kind of a manageable group. It's self-managing. They know each other. They can figure it out and so forth. And you can judge the team. So what happens if you're not disciplined about that is you get people who I call glue people. And I mean this in the most affectionate way. They are very nice people. They glue person A to person B, and you discover you don't need them. Person A can talk to person B without the person in between. Yeah. And that glue person slows everything down. So time to decision, quickness, small teams, and agile thinking is important. My experience in talking about this around the world is everyone goes like this. And this means I'm a human, and I'm breathing, and I'm listening to you. It does not mean I'm going to do anything. So if you hear these ideas, unless you implement the things I'm talking about, you won't get the benefit. Knowledge is not sufficient. You actually have to take the leadership. And that's when it gets tough, because you're talking about very protected groups, protected individuals, and so forth. The great business people know when to push those and when not to. And that's a judgment.
So, of course, moving on to AI. AI is going to be the most powerful tool humanity's ever created. It's also potentially going to be the most dangerous. Let's watch this clip.
A new age has begun, one not written in ink, but in code.
This innovation, this arrival of this new alien incredible intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, the most powerful tool humanity has ever created, and perhaps its greatest test.
The most important thing that's going to happen in about 500 years, maybe 1,000 years in human society.
Few understand it better than Eric Schmidt, the man who helped shape the digital world as we know it. Today he stands at the frontier of innovation and responsibility, asking the question that will define our future. can we control what we've created? The next revolution isn't coming. It's already here.
So
Wow, that's as good as my sonnet.
But
Thank you. Good job.
So I'm going to go a little off script, more provocative, I told you. So is this sort of AI race really a race between hopefully the good guys out-programming the bad guys? Is that what this race is going to be, with more power, more compute, more sort of programming knowledge? Is that how this is going to go down?
Well, the race to build a non-human intelligence that we collaborate with is the defining event of our generation, of our lifetimes. It will color everything. The gains will be phenomenal. One of my friends is dying of ALS. Can you imagine the value of a solution to that? It's horrible to see, and he's a great human being. I can go on and on about the tragedies that humans experience that these technologies can address. Healthcare is one obvious one. The arrival of intelligence for every single human being, right? Having an assistant that's as smart or smarter than you, the Einstein in a pocket. Just imagine all of that. These things, it's very hard to predict what will happen with this amount of new intelligence. Remember I said the most important are humans. Well, now we have humans plus the AI. There are plenty of downsides, right? And we can talk about them. But the most important thing is this stuff needs to be built in America, on our values, with our views. And I feel very, very strongly about this. I want American, I'll use the word liberalism in the classic sense. America's rule of law, its individual freedom, its distrust of the government, the combination of that individualism, the frontier belief is really, really important. And we're on a revolutionary frontier here. A simple example is, imagine if the internet had been invented in China. Just think about it. Just think about how different it would be and how different your experience would be on it.
By the way, after that sonnet, there's no offense taken whatsoever. So first question was a little bit provocative. I think my second question is the following. The acceleration of the intelligence is so profound that the question becomes, are these systems going to have their own consciousness? Mm-hmm. And if they have their own consciousness, are they going to be able to make decisions independent of the prompting? Which means, if they're smarter than us and they're independently prompted, can they figure out more intelligently than we can how to prevent us from turning them off?
Yes, you're now writing a movie script that I think we're going to see a lot of movies written about. So for a bit of background right now, these AI systems are prompted by humans. The technical term is called prompt engineering. And young people in college will go to prompt engineering class where they'll learn how to manipulate these models in really, really powerful ways. That's not general intelligence. That's special intelligence. So if I'm a physicist, which I'm not, I'll have my physics assistant and I'll say, I have the following idea, and the physics assistant will say, well, I've analyzed that, here's a better idea for you. But the invocation or the initiation occurs from the human. The question is, when do these systems, when are they able to initiate on their own? The technical term for that is called recursive self-improvement. They're just naturally learning and getting smarter. And there are all sorts of terrible scenarios. It discovers that the only thing the computer needs is electricity, so it decides to shut down a hospital to get more electricity for itself. Those are the kind of movie scenarios. To me, all of these are red lines. The point at which we humans give agency to these computers for what they do is a mistake. And I think collectively we need to define those red lines. Another example would be access to weapons. The last thing I want is an AI system making decisions about nuclear war, nor do any of us. That kind of thing.
I have a bunch of questions from that. Because the problem is with that is certainly, and we see this sort of play out geopolitically, the US, we presume, will be responsible. The question is, how do we deal with people who may have this that are not responsible? Yeah. Well, number one. And I'll give a little bit of hope to humanity. This is the second time I interview Eric, by the way. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this the first time, just to give humanity a little bit of hope. Obviously, nuclear weapons have been around for a generation. But for the first time that they were employed, thankfully, we've limited this technology to something that has not so far destroyed us. So I guess my question is, we can potentially have faith in our country, hopefully, to do the right thing and draw those red lines. How do we deal with the nefarious actors who may not be so ethical?
We're going to have this problem. Every technology, I mean, when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, it didn't occur to him that criminals would use it. I remember one day people said, "Did you know that there are criminals on the internet?" And I said, "Who let them in?" Right? We didn't design the internet for criminals, and they showed up, right? So you have to assume the same thing is going to happen with this technology. And I think the most important thing is to put in the observational systems to watch for it. And we should be able to create surveillance systems within the internet to watch for bad actors, at least in the extreme cases. I'm worried about it for the following reason. In our lifetimes, in the next 5 or 10 years, every single human on the planet who has a mobile phone, cell phone, will have access to Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, whomever, in some form. We've never had that devolution of power. We've never had that decentralized empowerment of humans. Now, this group, I trust. There's an awful lot of wacky countries and wacky cultures and wacky religions, where I'm not sure I would trust their collective action being consistent with our values.
For sure.
Right. And I think history will judge us based on how we handle the humans as this intelligence evolution occurs and empowers individuals.
So the most famous use case, obviously, of AI right now is the large language models. I mean, they're the ones that are being used day in and day out. What would you say are probably going to be, let's say, the top 1 or 2 or 3 next use cases that you think are going to change things? And maybe 1 or 2 that people aren't thinking about?
Well, so today there are sort of 3 things going on. I'll simplify it. Language stuff, that's what we were joking about with large language models. There's something called the agentic revolution, where you have agents. An agent takes language in, it has memory, and it produces something. So it says, I want to do a conference in Miami. And it selects the venue, and then it calls the mayor, and the mayor says yes, because the mayor is very pro-business. And then it calls the security people, and then it calls the contractors, and then it designs the stadium. Each of these is a work plan, right? Over and over again, that's workflow. Workflow is what happens in business. The technical industry believes 2 things. First, the scaling laws, which are the laws of improvement, are not slowing down. The crazy investment that you see is there for a reason. They're seeing the kind of gains, this factor of 10 every year, are continuing to come. It's pretty amazing. And most importantly, with that investment comes everything else that we talked about. It's enormously expensive. And by the way, we're going to run out of electricity before we run out of money, which is a separate discussion. But the important thing is you have language. The next thing, and then you have agents, and these agents do everything. There's something called agent orchestration, where you can move the agents around. And the third one is essentially reasoning. You now have systems that can pass math tests, chemistry tests, biology tests, and so forth at the graduate level and beat the humans. That's really remarkable. And I've watched them, and I have no idea what problems they're solving. And you can watch them go forward, it doesn't work, they problem solve like a human being. The union of those is the power. That will give us the power to innovate, to address our problems. And the thought experiment that I would give you is, let's imagine that one of the American companies, I obviously have my own bias, but we'll pick somebody else, whoever, manages to get to the point where these systems can solve problems that humans have never been able to solve. What is the value of that company? How many trillions of dollars in one company?
Infinity.
Right, it's literally, I mean, think about all the problems you face every day, and it can solve every one of them. And you can sit there and drink coffee and, sort of
My wife just solves most of them, but that's okay.
That's right. The important thing is that we're on the threshold of being able to have truly new innovation. And that's the hype, that's the promise. If we don't get there, people will be destroyed just from their own hype. I mean, it's extraordinary.
I'm going to ask one last question. It's a follow-up to the problem that you presented. Is SMRs, which are small-scale modular reactors, is that the solution for that energy gap that you're talking about, or is it going to be something else?
We need more energy in America. We need every kind of energy. We need nuclear. We need fusion. We need natural gas. We need renewables. We need wind. We need solar. We need it all. Why? Because those data centers, which account for 1% of GDP growth this year in America, need power. If you want that 3% growth that the president and others have talked about, you need to solve the energy problem.
Eric, thank you so much. What a provocative conversation.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Can I read one thing?
Go, of course.
I was thinking a lot about, you gave me the honor to talk to this incredible group about the frontier. In 1893, a fellow named Frederick Turner talked about the frontier. And he said, to the frontier, the American intellect owes its striking characteristics. This is 150 years ago. That coarseness and strength combined with acuteness and inquisitiveness, that practical, inventive turn of mind, quick to find expedients, that masterful grasp of material things, lacking in the artistic but powerful to effect great ends, that restless, nervous energy, that dominant individualism, working for good and evil, and with all that buoyancy and exuberance which comes with freedom. These are the traits of the frontier. This is America. This is us. This is why we're here. This is why you're a great leader. Thank you very much.
That was in 1893.
1893.
You know what happened 3 years later?
What's that?
You know what happened 3 years later?
What?
The city of Miami was established. 1896.
1896.
There you go.
Happy birthday to Miami.
There we
Thank
go.
you. Okay, Mayor. Okay,
you,
good.
my friend.
Thank you, guys.
At the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom, you don't just learn, you achieve. Through our interdisciplinary Bachelor of Science in Business and Government Leadership, you'll gain perspective, innovate, and connect with real-world leaders.
It starts with me.
It starts with me.
It starts with me. It starts with you.
Leadership starts here.
PIF is one of the world's largest and fastest-growing sovereign wealth funds. The United States is PIF's most important market outside of Saudi Arabia. Since 2017, PIF has directed $170 billion into the U.S. economy, fueling growth, creating opportunities, jobs, and contributing $33 billion to U.S. GDP. Together with our U.S. partners, U.S. businesses, and top global asset managers, we're advancing innovation across mobility, aviation, renewables, sport, technology, finance, and more. Strengthening markets and creating long-term value across both nations. PIF's deep U.S. commitment spans across sectors, from $23.8 billion U.S. equities and our New York office to Live Golf, CONCACAF, FIFA Club World Cup, Surge Stake and PFL, and Sanibels as one of Silicon Valley's largest backers in next-generation technology companies. From shared investments to shared ambition. Anchored by major stakes in Lucid Motors, Savvy's $8.5 billion acquisitions of Scopely and Niantic, and Google Cloud AI centers. Our partnership is building opportunities that reach far beyond today. Looking to 2030, PIF's U.S. partnership grows even stronger, creating over 500,000 American jobs and building long-term prosperity across both nations. From vision to value, PIF is invested in better.
America Business Forum proudly presents Jamie Dimon, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of JP Morgan Chase.
Grew up talking finance at the kitchen table as a kid.
What are you doing now? What are you doing to serve your people? Why can you do better? What is somebody else doing?
In a world shaken by crisis, one man stood firm. As CEO of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon built the world's most powerful bank, not by following the crowd, but by leading through the storm. While others fell in 2008, his discipline and foresight turned risk into resilience. A visionary of modern finance, a symbol of leadership when it mattered most. The leader built to last. America Business Forum presents Jamie Dimon. For the following interview, George Gonzalez, Vice Chairman and CEO of City National Bank of Florida, takes the stage of America Business Forum.
Thank God.
All right. So, Jamie, before we get started, I just want to take a second and thank everybody for being here this morning. I wasn't here yesterday, but I saw a bunch of video clips, and yesterday's program was outstanding. The lineup of speakers, including President Trump, really reflects the stature of this event, but more importantly, it reflects the stature of the city of Miami and the influence that we are generating both nationally and globally. Jamie, I'm sure you've been to a lot of conferences, I've been to a lot of conferences, and I've never seen the lineup of speakers that we've had yesterday and what we're going to have today. And a quick story. Mayor Francis called me up about 2 months ago and said, George, I am thinking about doing this event. Here are my speakers, and we're going to make this happen. I said, Francis, you're crazy. You got 2 months to pull this together. Look at the speakers. You have the president, you have Jamie Dimon, you have a whole list of very influential people. You're never going to make this happen. But if you want to do it, let's try. And here we are. So, Francis, you're a little nuts, but congratulations on a heck of an accomplishment. So with that, I want to take a second and one more time welcome one of the most respected voices in global finance, one of the most influential bankers of our generation, Jamie Dimon.
George, thank you. So thrilled to be here. Thank you.
So, Jamie, my guess is a lot of people have heard a lot about your professional accomplishments, your career, and your impact to banking. But let's start with something a little bit more personal. And let's talk about how did your childhood and how did your family influence who you are as a person and who you are as a leader?
Great. So first of all, thrilled to be here. A little embarrassing, this whole entry, but it's quite a production. I grew up, my grandparents were all Greek immigrants who came from Greece, never finished high school, moved to Jackson Heights, Queens, not far from where President Trump grew up, with a slightly smaller apartment than he had, a rental. But there were values that your parents taught. You didn't even know was happening at the time, which is, I'd say very fundamentally, it came from my grandparents, my parents, have a purpose in life. That purpose could be banking or art or science or being a political leader. It could be a caregiver. Treat everyone with respect. Everyone, like everyone equally and everyone fairly and everyone properly. Do the best you can. Whatever you're going to do the best you absolutely can. and hopefully make the world a better place while you're doing whatever you do. And those are kind of just values that's embedded in me, and I still believe them, and they're important for my family, and I think they're important for a lot of folks I talk about. When you talk about what actually drives them, it's things like that.
So you mentioned a very important word there, purpose. At what point in your life did you feel like you knew what your purpose was and your passion were going to be or needed to be or you wanted to be?
I didn't really. I guess I was in college, and I was always interested in business. I always read a lot. I always was interested in going out. My dad became a stockbroker, so I knew about financial services. But at one point, what I really wanted to do was help build a great company. Be part of the team, building a great company. I didn't know what I would be doing, but I knew that being part of a team, and anyone, I listened to Eric Schmidt, when you're on a team, and it's no different than team sports. You want the team to win, and that was kind of a driving thing. To me, financial services was fascinating because when you wake up in the morning and read a newspaper, almost everything in that paper is going to affect you. All around the world, stocks, markets, politics. So it's just I always found it a very fascinating field.
I'm going to skip around a little bit, but you just mentioned something that I struggle with every day, and I'm sure a lot of people here do as well. In today's environment where there's so much information coming at you, so much media, so many moving, fluid perspectives, where do you find the most accurate information that allows you to make decisions and to really set strategy for your organization?
Yeah, well, there are really two ways. I get up really early. I read 5 papers. I read everything people send me. I'm just constantly reading all the time, surveying the landscape of competitors, countries, and stuff like that. The second way is really just get on the road and get out with your management team, get in a bus and go to a branch and talk to a lot of people, because a lot of very smart people out there, and the best ideas don't even come from America. They might come from places you don't expect it, and you run into technologies and you learn things. I remember years ago I sent the consumer banking team 15 years ago to China, and they were like, "Why are we going to China? We're an American U.S. consumer bank." And I said, "You'll find out when you get there." And I had them meet with Ping An and Tencent and WeChat and Alibaba, and it opens up your eyes. So just get out. I can go to a branch. You and I can go to a branch together today and sit down and talk to the tellers, and we will learn something. Something stupid that we do, or something that doesn't work, or something that they did better in another bank where they worked before, or something like that. So just constantly talking to people, constantly surveying the landscape. Yeah, I heard Eric use the word curiosity, constant curiosity. Once your mind closes, you're not going to be able to make a lot of progress on a lot of things.
Not only do you learn something, but you probably get the real story of what's really happening, that by the time things get to you from a leadership standpoint, it's been filtered so many times, but when you're hearing it firsthand, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I don't allow people to filter stuff. I still read customer complaints, and I always tell people, if they ask you a question, you got to respond to me directly and not go up that chain of command, because that chain of command, starts to edit it and fine-tune it, and you got, if you're in a position like mine, you just got to break down those barriers all the time. The bureaucracy does want to control you, so you got to kill the bureaucracy. That's part of my job,
So let's go back to your personal life. Yeah. I think we all understand and believe that challenges are also silver linings in life. So as you think about your career, your personal life, what's been some of your hardest lessons, and what did you learn from them?
In the personal life, we've all been through, some forms of personal hardships. But the lessons from those hardships, if you're talking about the mistakes you made, like the things you did personally, that's a great quote. You don't learn a lot from the second kick of the mule. Again, I heard the mayor and Eric talking about it. We've all made a tremendous amount of mistakes. And I always say there's a pattern to them sometimes. Like when you act in anger, well, that is almost always a mistake. It was almost, when I was a young executive, someone gave me a business card that said, all I had to do was fill out the date. My name is Jamie Dimon, and I'd like to apologize for my behavior on the night of X, because I would lose my temper over something. So, so you're constantly learning about that too. And it's better to learn from other people's mistakes than making them yourself. And you could do that too.
So Jamie, the institution that I'm privileged to lead is $30 billion, 1 or 2 states, 1,300 employees. You're leading a $4.5 trillion institution, 60 countries, 48 states, 300,000 employees. All right? We're almost the same. It's pretty much equal playing grounds between Jamie and I. Another 120 years or so, I'll be on that side of the room. But when you think about the importance of culture, you know, we believe culture is the backbone of strategy. But when you think about the importance of culture, how do you implement culture when you have an organization that's all about managing risk and it's of that size?
Yeah. Well, first, I've been there for quite a while, so it's a little bit different. But you better be relentless. I mean, and again, I'm going to go back to the team example. You know, if you have a team of people, everyone does their homework, everyone does their sprints, everyone learns the plays. And if you're the coach or the boss or whatever, you better be relentless. And we're pretty relentless on that. And it's not because you say we treat employees properly. They see you do it. They see you have bad people, you ask them to leave. You know, I remember the first time I have fired clients because they mistreat our employees. That goes through the whole organization, that these people mean what they say what they mean. Getting on the road, you know, a lot of people say, you know, we're going to take care of the customer. But you go to a lot of corporations, they all stay at the corporate headquarters and talk to each other. They're not going on a sales call. You know, they're not going to sweat the issue with why the client may not be happy with you or something like that. So you just got to have to do it day in, day out, 7 days a week, kind of relentlessly. That when you go through business reviews, you're going through the detail. How long does it take to do this? How long does it take to do that? And then people get it over time, and it kind of filters through the company. And then you got to communicate. I undervalued communication earlier in my life, but if you can communicate it properly and clearly, it really matters. And it can't be corporate pablum. It's got to be words people actually understand. So, you know, with stuff that comes out of my office is written by me. There's no corporate bullshit in it. I can't stand it. I won't allow it. But of course, people write it for me, and they think I'm going to send it out, and I will not. You know, and people know when you're speaking to them. And
so, you know, as I'm scrolling through Instagram, I consistently run across Jamie Dimon quotes. You're legendary. So one of the quotes that I thought about was, the worst thing a company can have is a bunch of yes men. How do you ensure that people are telling you the truth? How do you filter out the BS from the truth? And particularly when you're Jamie Dimon, because people want to please you. How do you filter this out?
Yeah, so if people try to please me, it pisses me off. That is not the goal of an organization. Even when people say they want to be loyal to me, that gets me a little upset too, because they say, don't be loyal to me. Be loyal to the principles for which we stand. Be loyal to the company, their clients. That's not a personal type of thing. I was at a thing like this years ago, and a woman was giving a great speech, and she said, you have to have one truth teller at the table. And she was walking out, and I came up next, and I said, can I just stop you for 1 second? If you've got 10 people around the table, and there's only one truth teller, you have a problem. You know, and you weed them out. You know, that when people are honest and forthright, they raise the hand and they say, that is not accurate. And you better have that, because if you don't have that, you will be going off base very quickly. And so you have a kind of a BS meter about how people are. And also, like you said, when you travel people, I mean, one of the favorite things I do, you know, I call it the breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm at the bar with you guys. You know, and when I'm at the bar hanging out with a bunch of people in the company around the world, they'll tell you. When they trust you, they'll tell you, yeah, Jamie, you really got to look at this. You know, you don't understand what's happening, and you know, and then they also know you'll respond. You know, it doesn't make them right, but they know that I heard it, and now it's my job maybe to do something about it. And over time, they see you do the right thing, and they know that you mean what you say. And then everyone who works for you does the same thing. So, you know, you don't have to necessarily come to me, because there are a lot of people who say, you know, this is the right way to do something, and we simply do it.
So basically what you're saying is leading by example is a key element of making sure that the people that you're trying to instill certain beliefs in, they're watching you basically emulate those behaviors.
Yeah, and you can't have friends of Jamie.
Right.
That your door's open to everybody. I don't know if Eric said this morning, but you know, when you're in a room with a bunch of people, you know, you got to reach out to the person who's not speaking up. You know, you got to reach out. You know, there are shy people in the room. They may be man or woman or black or white or LGBT, but it's our job to reach out to them and to have enough empathy to see that they want to say something, but they're a little embarrassed or it's harder for them to do it. And you know, and so very often I'll talk to someone after a meeting and ask them that. And then you got to get rid of the bad. There are these really, really bad traits that get built up, and I'm sure you've all seen these. It's the meeting after the meeting. Well, I didn't want to say it in front of everybody, but. And they're trying to get you to change the decision the group had made. It's the rope-a-dope, where the information wasn't shared beforehand. It's all these little tricks that the politicians and the BSers do to try to capture it. I don't have meetings after meeting. I tell people, if you can't say it in front of your partners, don't say it at all. You get paid a lot of money to do the right thing. And so, and again, I'll go back to a team example. In corporations, you can do a lot of BS, but you can't do it on a football field. That person, they learn their play, they didn't learn their play, the coach will take them out. But in our field, it's very easy to, let people, they're nice people, they're a friend of mine. So the discipline on the sports team, that's what you want inside a company too.
So Jamie, you've highlighted the value of learning from your competitors and also the value of learning from other institutions outside of your industry. And when you think about what are some of the insights that you've been able to draw from companies or leaders outside of the financial services industry?
Yeah. So when I say I travel and see people, I always go see other companies. I've been to Google and Dell Computer and WeChat and Alibaba. I mean, it's amazing to learn. So you have to do it outside your own industry. I always love to ask people, how do you run your joint? What do you do? How do you meet? When do you meet? Who has the follow-up list? How do you run your office? How do you deal with customer complaints? And so you're always learning from that too. And there are always new tricks. And they're always, if you look at, people write analyst reports or people write for newspapers and magazines, there's always someone who just did something different or better. And I even remember when I was a younger executive, there was another guy there called Bob Lipp, who's a very good friend of mine. I was watching him run a meeting. He was fabulous in running the meeting. He made it fun, but there was no BS about it. And he used to always use a quote, celebrate your successes, but in the management meeting, emphasize the negatives. And, and he would always take you on the road and always take you to branches. And he showed you how to make it you didn't go to a branch just to show the flag. You went to a branch he'd sit down with we'd have lunch with the tellers in the back or something like that and learn from them. And you learn from other people all the time. I still learn tricks of the trade, always.
Jamie, we have a quick video, but before we kick off the video, you've been an unbelievably influential role model in the world of finance, business, even public policy, and geopolitics. And during the financial crisis, you were known to be the face of stability. So when everybody else was running for cover, you were cool, calm, and collective. So let's show a quick video, and then we're going to get back to a question for you.
In 2008, the world's financial system was on the brink. Markets collapsed, giants fell, fear spread faster than reason.
Basically, everyone's job is gone. Well, that's not what we've been told in finance.
But in the eye of the storm, one leader stood steady. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, guided his team with discipline, foresight, and conviction.
Doing a better job educating Americans about the power of our liberty, our freedoms.
While others chased risk, he built resilience. Through decisions that would define a generation, JP Morgan emerged not broken, but stronger. A fortress of stability in a world of uncertainty. A masterclass in leadership under pressure. A story of foresight, courage, and the power of principle.
So, there's crisis and then there's crisis. When everything around you seems to be unstable and on fire, and the system seems to be on fragile ground, what's the requirement of leadership, and what does that really feel like in that moment?
Yeah. It's like, first of all, you're kind of prepared beforehand, so you have people and risks, and I tell people what really changed wasn't much we did, is that our risk committee used to meet once a week. It was meeting 5 times a day, including midnight or 5 a.m. in the morning to capture what was going on in Asia. And you got rid of all formality. You have a problem, you bring it up. You need you need people who are experts in this client, this credit, this legal system in Iceland or something like that. They're in the room, and you just move. It actually is kind of calming because you just roll up your sleeves. You start working 15 or 20 hours a day. You do it 7 days a week until the crisis is over. And as opposed to, it's almost like more relaxing to actually attack the problem than to worry about the problem. And so even today, when I have a real deep problem, I'd rather go to work, get the people there. And also, we have a lot of great people. So, we were just working it, just nonstop all the time. You are kind of breathless. I mean, you have people all around you. Some of these companies, people lost their money, their life, their careers, and it's terrible, but you want to help. So even some of these things, we set up outsourcing groups to get jobs for people who had lost their jobs, et cetera, and you just try to do the best you can. And you learn, by the way, that some people in a crisis, they are fabulous, and some people in a crisis, they are like children. I mean, literally like scaredy little children who can't believe that they have to have any kind of pressure like this. Like somehow life should have given them the gift of no problems ever. And so you learn a lot about people in a crisis.
It's interesting. When I hear you talking about crisis and you just got to work the problem, one of the things that we talk about at our organization is when there's crisis, it creates focus. And in all honesty, it allows you, if you can navigate that, when you get through the crisis, you've outperformed your peers. There's an opportunity to create some distance between you and everybody else because you were better prepared to navigate that situation and you executed. During good times, everybody's doing good.
Yeah.
During crisis, not everybody executes at that performance.
Yeah. And we've had pretty good times for quite a while now, yes.
So let's tackle something that you speak a lot about, which is you are a full-throated patriot and capitalist.
Yeah.
That's something that you've said repeatedly. And how do those beliefs, how do they guide your decision-making, particularly in a world that appears or is definitely so divided as we are today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the most important thing to me is family and all that. Right next to that is my country. And it's not because it's just my country. Remember, this country was not a tribe. It was not a nationality. It was an idea. And anyone can become an American. And the power of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of enterprise, independence. You can do what you want. You can live what you want. You can say what you want. You can believe what you want. You get to vote for our people in government. It creates this huge innovation. I don't think all the American public fully understands the power of that freedom. And you got to, those of us who travel around the world, you'd be surprised how there are far less freedoms overseas, and it's stifling, and the heavy hand of government, which could be pretty powerful in a lot of countries. So, I deeply believe that it is this democracy, this country, are the shining city on the hill. It's the arsenal of democracy. It's the arsenal of freedom. It's going to be that way. It's going to be that way for the next 100 years. And all you got to do is read history. The world relies on us. I tell people, even non-aligned nations rely on America for the safety and security we provide for the world. And you got to be very careful when you look at what that means for people. So I think we should celebrate it. We should teach civics more. We should teach history more. We could acknowledge our flaws, but we should not denigrate the greatness of this country.
So, Jamie, how do we bridge these political divides in our country, or even around the world? Yeah. How's that going to happen? And what's the future that you see for the United States of America?
Yeah, I'm not, read history again. We've had divides before. We had the Great Depression. We had Civil War, for God's sake. We had Revolutionary War. We've had some terrible times. When I was growing up, students were killed on American campuses. Martin Luther King was killed. Robert F. Kennedy was killed. I mean, take a deep breath about history, okay? And that's what we are. We have a democracy. Sometimes it looks tough, and sometimes it looks tough. I say participate, we get involved, as you mentioned, in policy, getting things right. Getting policy right is kind of free for the American public. We need to do more of that. Just get involved. I am concerned, away from America, about the free and democratic world. So think of the wars in Ukraine, the terrors in the Middle East. Those things are challenging the world as we know it. Now, I think we'll be okay. I don't think of divine rights as success. So I think we have to work those things to get them right. So I'm much more concerned about that than our democracy, per se.
So JP Morgan just recently announced a $1.5 trillion initiative to help fuel America's security and resiliency. And you're going to be investing significantly in advanced manufacturing and defense and energy, AI, and quantum. What's the form of those investments, and what do you think that's going to help achieve over the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, so I often ask myself the question, what you should do. So if you read, I write my chairman's letter every year, and last year I talk about all these policies we got wrong in America, and that we need to fix them, and you know them, housing and education and crime and immigration and all these things we could do better, and it's holding us back. And but this year I started asking the question, well, what can we do about it? What can J.P. Morgan Chase do about it? Now, we do a lot around the American dream, affordable housing and mortgages and education and healthcare and skills, but the SRI, the Strategic Resiliency Initiative, is to help finance, either kind of with equity money or big loans, companies who are building things that make America and our allies resilient. So think of aerospace, defense, AI, super chips, some of these data centers you read about. Think of medical ingredients. That what can we do to secure the future and health of the United States of America and our allies around the world? And so we're going to add, over the next 10 years, another $500 billion of financing. That could be for big companies. There's also going to be, we're going to also do $10 billion of more like equity financing to help. Think of a middle market company that makes an optical equipment that goes in F-35 fighter, but they want to build a second plant in anticipation of a government contract. We may buy a piece of the company, give them the money to build the plant. So we're just forming around it. We're putting real power about this. We want to do our part. And if you look back, I hate crying over spilled milk, we all should have started doing this 15 years ago. The Chinese have been doing this for 15 years. And so we're a little late. You read about rare earths, but we can catch up. We have the time, but we got to do it quickly. And we're also going to write about policy. We have a lot of policy to stop us from doing this. How we do budgeting for the military, a whole bunch of other things. So we're going to do a lot of work, to make sure we're doing the right things to keep us all free and safe.
This administration, Trump's administration, seems to be very focused on trying to lower the amount of regulation and bureaucracy so that private sector, the economy can prosper. How do you see that playing out, and how do you see that impacting the financial services industry?
I love the fact about being pro-business. This notion that somehow, being anti-business is going to help the average American citizen or even the lower paid. So I agree with the concept. I don't think we've done a particularly good job taking care of the bottom 20% of our citizens. Their incomes didn't go up. Their health care is worse. They live in more crime in the neighborhoods. Their schools don't work really well. And we did that. That's Democrat and Republican policies, by the way. So I agree with that concept. I don't agree with the concept that beating up business is a way to fix it. Business creates jobs. Business pays people. Business does... So I do think business can get involved, and I may write an op-ed soon about good public policy is free. Okay, if we do a better job for schools, it's free. If we do some of this our regulatory system has got, and I'm not talking about banks, by the way, any one of you get involved in regulation, you could be a restaurant, you could be a small business, it is terrible, federal, state, permitting, local. The affordable housing problem, it's all regulatory stuff. You can't build a multifamily thing. You can't put this here. It doesn't have enough parking. It's got to have all these things. It's all regulatory. And so we can fix this stuff, and it's free. The government doesn't have to borrow more money to fix it. We already spend the money. We just need to fix the system a little bit. And so I think we should all get involved in trying to fix these policies that would make our country work far better. And deregulation is part of it. If you don't believe me, go to Europe, folks, okay? And Europe used to have a GDP per person of 90% of America. It's now 65% of America. It's on its way to 50% of America, which will jeopardize the health of Europe itself over time. And it's all anti-business, anti-investment, anti-innovation, and they kind of know it. And if they don't fix it, and we should help them fix it, because if Europe does badly, I think it's really bad for the Western world too. So, so I am very pro this. I'm not. And we should do it wisely.
Jamie, let's tackle AI for a second. I was in New York last week, and I met with your team. I met with Google, Microsoft, Accenture, Boston Consulting, you name it. And the amount of money that is being invested in artificial intelligence and the pace of that investment is unbelievable. How is that going to reshape the economy? How is it going to reshape the way we do business these days?
Look, it's going to affect, the way I look at it is every application, every job, every customer interface, everything we all do, and you're all going to have your own personal assistants. You're going to have agents that do research for you every time you wake up in the morning. And I agree with Eric. It's going to be unbelievable. It's going to cure a lot of diseases that we've all been afflicted with. You know, my guess is the developed world will be working 3.5 days a week in 20, 30, 40 years and have wonderful lives. And there are some dangerous parts, which I'll let Eric describe a little bit here. But I would say embrace it. You know, technology has downsides. It's used by bad people, but embrace it. We had 40 million people working on farms. Tractors and fertilizers is now like 1.5 million. We live better lives. We have better food. Those people went to do other things, and so it'll be okay. We've been using it now for 13 years. We have, we spend a lot of money on it. We know exactly what it does in certain things. It's literally at the beginning. There's whatever you think, there are waves of this coming down the road. And the only thing I'd add to that is if it happens too fast for society to adjust, and I will give you a thought exercise. I think there are 2 million commercial truckers in the United States, and if somehow you can push a button, convert it to AI, it's cheaper, faster, safer, less CO2. You kind of want to do it, but you shouldn't do it if you're going to put 2 million people out of jobs. And the way to handle that is retraining, income assistance, slow it down, early retirement, relocation programs, and it's all doable. And that would have to take both government and business doing that together. And so we should be preparing for that today because AI is happening rather quickly. We do it ourselves. We are constantly changing jobs, and we've reduced jobs in certain categories for AI. Almost all the people get redeployed. They go do other jobs. They're very smart, capable people. And I agree with Eric too. Human capital. You can't replace human capital. You can't replace thinking. All these things that people think are going to happen won't happen exactly the way you expect. So,
one of the things we like to say, and this will eventually change, that AI is not going to replace people. AI is going to replace people that don't use AI.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important element of what you're talking about here. So there's a lot of moving pieces right now. You got trade, you got tariffs, you got Fed policy, you have AI. What is the single most important piece of advice you would give an entrepreneur, CEO, of how to navigate this environment?
Yeah, okay, ready? Here's my single piece of advice. There is no one thing. Okay, when you mentioned tariffs and trade and politics and geopolitics and potential inflation and Fed policy. You're gonna have to navigate all that. I think the best way to navigate that is actually, think it through. Kind of make the list of tailwinds and headwinds. They're not all going to happen at the same time. They're going to affect each other. If you look at all these problems we have, sometimes it isn't. People say tariffs. Well, that's just one thing. There are all these other things that take place, and they're like a lot of straws in the camel's back. And then look at the world a little bit. Like, what are the potential things of outcomes? Can you handle those outcomes? And then you'll be okay. Because what you really want to do is survive.
Right.
And serve clients when times are tough. And so, but there are a lot of things taking place today. And there's a lot of turbulence out there. And to me, that creates a little more uncertainty that you should be prepared for. And hopefully, continue to have the soft landing. But it may not happen. We just don't know.
I was just reflecting on what you just said about AI. And this, 2 years ago, my preparation for this interview would have taken 3 or 4 days, back and forth with the communication department. It took probably 10 minutes to come up with a list of questions and quotes, and it's just how quickly life is.
I was going to tell you did a great job, but now I know it was Gemini.
Well, I helped Gemini. I polished Gemini a little bit, but it was certainly. So let's tackle something that's been a little bit interesting for a couple of years. So you've been famously skeptical about Bitcoin. But I think you've come off of that a little bit over the last 6 months or 12 months. And I know JP Morgan uses a lot of blockchain, token, and a lot of innovation into your business and your approach. How do you balance the risk of investing in technologies that are going to drive innovation and future growth? And what are your thoughts on stablecoin and Bitcoin? That's a loaded question.
This is a great way to deal with an issue or something like that. Whenever we meet as a business unit, so it could be a small business unit like consumer branches or a big one like global investment banking, on the table and on the agenda is what are you doing in tech, AI, et cetera. That is always on the agenda. And I do it differently than other people. I don't say what's in your budget. I always say, are you doing everything you need to do to win in the future, period? And I don't care what the budget says. I don't care what it is. And you may walk in and say, you know what, I was just over somewhere, I really need to do X. My view is, you better be doing X. You know, so to me, the budget is a roadmap. It is not your boss. And so I make people, we're going to do that. Stablecoin was one where I don't know how it's going to play out. But that also answers my question is, what do we do about it? We're involved. We're building a stablecoin. We may build it with other banks. We have a JP Morgan deposit coin already, which I can pay you interest on. We use the blockchain. Any of these tools that you want to use for smart contracts and stuff like that, we are simply going to do. I don't know how it's going to sort out. But I'd rather be plain, which keeps us smart, than acting like I know the answer to it. And so, and we do that with all technology. Whether, you know, sometimes regardless of what I think about it, I want you to be dabbling in it. Because you're being smart, and it is much more important than saying Jamie does or doesn't like it and something like that. So, and we do that with almost all frontier type of technologies.
I'm going to shift on you a little bit. So there's been a historic relocation of both people and capital to Florida and to South Florida, primarily from the west coast of the country, the Northeast, Illinois, D.C., you name it. And what are your thoughts on that? Is that going to continue? And for the residents of Wall Street South, how should we think about the future relative to that relocation that's taking place?
Yeah, my bottom line is I think that everyone has to compete. And you know, when I grew up in New York City, I was probably one of those New York City kids that thought that, you know, it's New York City, New Jersey, and the rest of the world, you know, something like that. And you know why New Yorkers are so depressed?
Why?
Because the light at the end of the tunnel is New Jersey. But now, and when I first started traveling the world, you know, a lot of cities weren't great places, including like London, you know, or Singapore, or Hong Kong, or Nashville, or now they're great. I mean, all these cities, they've got opera and food and infrastructure and terrific universities, and it's a competitive world. It's competitive between countries, it's competitive between cities, it's competitive between states. And you're mentioning a bunch of these states that are driving business out, you know, and it will backfire. And so people vote with their feet. And you know, some people act like they vote with their feet because they're selfish. They vote with their feet because they see a better life for them and their family. I'm not mad at someone if they leave JP Morgan because they say they got a better opportunity. I'm like, I understand. It's your life. I want you to be happy. It's not about you making me happy. And so there's a competitive element to all these things, and like even COVID taught you that you can work. A lot of people can work in different cities and be quite productive. And you know, we have big technology centers around the world, including Buenos Aires, because they've got a great university, you know, on coding and engineering in Argentina. And so Miami and Florida compete. They compete with taxes, they compete with universities, they compete with, we have more employees in Texas today than we have in New York. You know, if you go to Texas, you want to build something, you build it. The taxes per personal and individual lower. They've got their universities make sure they're graduating the students you want. And if you need to change a bus route because you have 5,000 employees somewhere, they just change the route. You know, you go to other cities, you'll be negotiating for 20 years. You know, and I think they're making a mistake. And a lot of those cities do things in the name of good, which create bad. All of these bad policies, in my view, usually hurt the lower paid people more. That's what happens. And they also don't acknowledge their problems. So I think like in inner cities, I mean, we do a lot of work in inner cities in the United States, in the schools. But the first thing is, raise your hand and say we aren't graduating kids with the skills they need to have a well-paying job. So I give you skills, 16 weeks, advanced manufacturing, or taking care of a car, taking care of a Cessna, coding, compliance, something like that, $60,000 a year job at 17 with full medical. We're not doing it. We're just simply not doing it. And then, you know, and I'm not going to blame any particular group here, but if you don't stand forward and say, we have a problem, this isn't working, you won't fix it. So there's a lot to do. And, you know, like going back to Miami, Florida's done a great job. You know, and if you look at what's happening, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia are growing. You know, California, Texas. Texas has just started a new stock exchange. You know, I don't know if it's going to work, but it's going to probably be bad for ISS and Glass Lewis And I think that's great. I think those institutions are terrible and should be crushed, and so the domicile of corporations, the litigation system we have to deal with. We better start fixing these things, because if we don't, folks, in 30 years, we're going the way of Europe. And, and we have to open our eyes and make sure we're quite clear. And if we do it right, it'll help all of our citizens, all of them, not just, the people who you think are well off.
Jamie, you have a very famous quote that says, if you're not confused, you don't know what's going on. I love that. Yeah. So that confuses me. What are you confused about most right this second?
I'm always trying to, sometimes people think these CEOs are totally on top of stuff. Just so you don't know, half the time I feel like I'm riding a Bronco and hanging on for dear life. And all the things you talk about, what does this mean and what does that mean? Well, I worry about all those things, and they do get quite confusing. But I heard Eric said, we iterate over and over. We don't try to get the answer in the first time. We meet, we'll do it again, we'll do it again, we'll do it again. And sometimes, so I tell people, in most even very complex issues, the answer is waiting to be found. It's waiting to be found if you get the right people working it over and over, looking at it from multiple different angles, or at least by the time you make that decision, you've minimized the chance of making a terrible mistake.
So I have 20-year-old kids, their first year, freshmen in college. And one of the things that my wife and I struggle with is, what advice do we give young folks today about their professional careers, given the fact that there's so much volatility in such a quickly changing landscape? The advice that I received from my parents is completely different than the advice that we should be providing kids today. What would you say?
I learn, first of all, the world is faster and it's more complex. It doesn't change my advice that much, but learn. It's a lifelong thing. You learn by already talking about people and reading, always. And it's always changing. Whatever profession you're in, it's changing again. You should be reading, thinking, talking, traveling, etc. Develop your EQ. Your EQ ultimately is probably more important for your happiness. It's probably more important for management skills. We're just part of a team. I love Ted Lasso. The Ted Lasso is, and Eric's part of it. The team, the coach is trying to get both the individuals and the team to function properly, get the best out of everybody. Sometimes it dictates discipline. Teach the kids discipline. I'm quite disciplined. I do my homework, I do my exercise, I do my reading, I do all my pre-reads, I'm always focused in a meeting. But develop your EQ, and your EQ is empathy, communication, follow-up. Are you earning people's trust and respect? There are a lot of people who aren't trusted and respected because they're BSers, and everyone else knows. And so they have to be flexible all the time. Have good partners in life.
And my father wanted to be a physician. My grandfather had a heart attack, and he had to take over a sort of fledgling tailor business that my dad then grew into a ladies' coat manufacturer. But I think he always had a dream of wanting something more. And I practiced law. I represented the president, as you know. And I always wanted to be a real estate guy.
So you have developed some of the most iconic projects around the country. For these folks, maybe in real estate, other business, what is the secret of spotting a great opportunity before everyone else sees it? Is there something there?
I get asked that question all the time.
I'm sure.
I never have an answer that people are satisfied with. I spoke once at Columbia. They were all MBA graduate students, and no one liked my answer. They all thought that we had some sort of secret sauce as to find the right opportunity. I said the other day at the dinner for the speakers that we went deep into Miami when Francis Suarez came into office, as well as, thank you, as well as the governor. And because investing behind solid government, pro-business government, I think is an important feature. Giuliani changed the investment climate in New York in 1992. And then Mayor Bloomberg accentuated that. Low crime, pro-business, business doing things with government and a public-private benefits package, I mean informally. And it worked in New York. Unfortunately, it's turning now.
You know, I asked Ken Gerfen about that yesterday, about New York, and you think that that will have an effect in real estate there?
I don't even think rent-stabilized housing has been destroyed. The value package there has destroyed it. But I think you see a lot of these people who are voting for people like Mandami, and they think it's just a bunch of rich people losing their money. That's not the really bad condition. The bad condition is you're going to see banks not finance that sector anymore. And when liquidity moves out of the system, that hurts everybody. People don't fix their properties up. That ultimately hurts the working class people who live there. And I grew up on working class housing. That's where I started my business, so I know it very well.
So speaking of that, real estate obviously has changed dramatically in the past decade, from financing, development cycles, cultural shifts, how people live and work around the country. What's been the biggest transformation that you've seen?
In the business?
Yeah, real estate.
Well, it's become institutionalized. When I first went into the business, Brett, in 1986, you didn't have J.P. Morgan in the business, or Blackstone in the business, or Apollo in the business, or there's so much institutional capital now. They were all afraid of owning housing. They thought that there was some sort of liability attached to it, and now everybody loves it.
What's the piece of advice that you wished someone had given you early on?
Don't sell.
Don't sell.
Yeah.
Hold on to it.
Yeah, but I couldn't afford not to sell. I mean, I had to sell because I started with a $20,000 check from my dad, and that was probably half his liquid net worth. But if I didn't sell, look, I wasn't just in it for the money. I actually enjoyed the people I met. I was blessed to be in my own business. So, but when I say don't sell, what I mean is that if you have conviction, if you believe in things, then stick with it.
But also, if you have the financial ability to hold on to the property over time, that has paid off, is what you're saying.
Correct. Like we're just, I'm really not in the business anymore because I've divested. So I have a son who runs the real estate business, and he's very good at it. And I have another son who runs our crypto business, and he's very good at that. But I tell my son, who oversees the real estate business, we shouldn't sell anything. Now, we have a lot in Florida. We've got a big, deep, long bet on Florida for all the obvious reasons. The only downside to Florida people can think of is hurricanes. And yet, we haven't really seen one this year. California and Texas have much worse situations than that. So I just don't think you can underwrite global climate change and so forth. I think Florida is on the move.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, talk about Miami specifically in contrast to big cities like New York and LA.
Well, they're coming down here, Brett. I mean, I think in short order, you'll have some bigger headquarter moves. People want to spend their time here. And you've got great airports, great airlift coming in here. The restaurants are now wonderful. You've got sports teams down here, culture, diversity of population from all over the world. And you've got a lot of capital coming down here. I mean, Jamie Dimon is now down here, he's the biggest of them all.
Yeah. You know, you've recently served as a special envoy to the Middle East. Now you have this new title, Special Envoy for Peace Missions, because you're doing peace missions all over the world.
Thank you.
You have been at the forefront, at the tip of the spear of some of the most relevant geopolitical events, really, of the last few years. There's part of your story many may not know. Let's take a look at this video.
Defined a generation. Towers of glass and steel that touched the clouds. But then, everything stopped.
And they said to me, you're never going to have a bigger hit than that in your life, losing a child.
We're going to do everything possible.
In the silence that followed loss, he discovered something greater than success. From the pain of losing one life, he found meaning in helping rebuild many.
The days of blank checks are over.
From shaping cities to helping shape peace.
This finish line is about saving lives.
Because some builders raise towers and others rebuild the world within us.
You talked about this on 60 Minutes, and it was so powerful. You lost your son, and that horrible event in your life has enabled you in this job to actually be empathetic across the line with other people who have similar situations.
Yeah, I feel that my boy Andrew puts his hand on my back and takes me to these places. And it began shortly after his death. I met multiple families whose families had buried children, and I became friends with them. And this job is the most blessed of them all. I mean, the president gave me this opportunity. Sometimes I don't even know how to thank him. He thanks me all the time. I say, sir, I need to thank you. I'm getting more out of this than the other side is. I met so many families. You know, Brett, one of the things that got me through my boy's death is understanding that other people had it worse than me. I met a family who buried 3 children out of 4. And so I met those hostage families, and I remember thinking, what would every night be for me if I went to sleep and I had a daughter who was there, and I felt she was being mistreated? How would I deal with that? Or a son who was in the military and wasn't being treated correctly. On some level, my son's death was quick. The notice was fast to me. I heard about it from the doctors at Cedars-Sinai. It's the only time in my life I fainted. And I just did. I just don't even remember, maybe 15 seconds of it. And I think these people had it a lot worse than me. If I was going to lose a child, I wouldn't want to lose a child that way. Being terrorized every single night. And we became friends and bonded with them. I remember when I'm probably going to be traveling to Israel over the weekend for one of the funerals, and I was talking to the Nutras and the Chens who just got their children back. And I thought to myself, I know I don't want to call it a happy moment because I know it's bittersweet. They know their child was gone, but sometimes you can't come to terms with it. And I'll tell you, I'll point something out. Every family who came to the White House to see me, I would go down to the president and I would say, so-and-so is here. And he knew who they all were. And he didn't refuse a single visit, Brett. And he became, I think, as impacted emotionally as I did. He doesn't, as you well know, you're a good friend. He doesn't like to show that part of his personality. But he's an incredible human being. He really is. And he didn't refuse a single visit. I mean, that's old school. He heard what it was like, the struggle they had been going through, and I don't know. It's kind of really. I think it's kind of amazing to have a president who is that compassionate, and yet he doesn't get acknowledged for it.
You know, you've had some massive success in your business career. Huge properties that launched and made you a lot of money, your company a lot of money. But that success, compared to watching those hostages hug their families after all that time, just put that in context.
I'd give it all up. I mean, I would. I mean, I don't take a salary. I pay for all my own expenses. I travel all over the world. I don't ask for a gas. I don't mean this to be a testament to me. I'm saying to you that it's worth more than any form of money to help people, to bring lives home, to feel like I do it. Thank you. Thank you. You know, to feel like I do it in, you know, like my boy's death now means something to me. It means that I get to carry on with his spirit. I actually said this very same thing to Ruby Chen yesterday. I said, your boy, look at, you lost your son. He fought on behalf of his country.
His remains just came back.
His remains just came back. The funeral is Sunday. I said, look at you and your wife were indefatigable in pursuing his remains back. But you raised public consciousness about these people in the tunnels who were being held. And that's what allowed us to create the pressure to bring everybody home. That's you having done it on his behalf. That's a memory, a feeling that you'll have for the rest of your life. And they're not going to stop fighting ever again, these people. They're not going to give up for any of the remaining bodies.
You know, a lot of business people, entrepreneurs in this audience, you've dealt with some of the most complex negotiations now and dynamics around the world. You obviously dealt with complex negotiations in your business life before that. But what did you learn about negotiation and trust and leadership since being in this job?
Well, trust and integrity is everything. And people have to respect you and believe in you. World leaders today respect and trust the United States of America because of Donald Trump's leadership. And that's just a fact. Thank you. I don't think they're used to that. I think they were used to people before this election who would say certain things and not do what they say. And he does what he says. And it carries a lot of weight in the world.
You know, the Abraham Accords kind of reshaped, obviously, parts of the Middle East, political, economic landscape. From your perspective, what's the next frontier for regional collaboration, and what does that look like?
Well, look, Abraham Accords are big. I'm flying back to Washington tonight because we're going to announce tonight another country coming into the Abraham Accords tonight.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you want to, you know, lift the curtain here, or do you want to? I have a show at 6 o'clock tonight.
I don't know if it's out yet, and the president constantly says that, you know, he thinks it's important, and you know how I do my job because I do it in this way, and I'm not a leaker.
Okay, all right.
So,
well, if you could just tell me before special report, that'd be helpful.
I think it's going to be news by like 6:30 tonight.
Okay, all right, we'll get it on. But bigger picture, next frontier, you think more things are happening, dominoes are falling.
Well, look, we have to, the critical piece of Gaza now is implementing. I was on the phone before I just got in with the Turkish foreign minister, with Ron Dermer. So Jared, I, and a very, very, very strong team are very focused on implementation. What you learned what I learned in the real estate business is just because you bought the deal didn't mean you were going to make any money from it. And so you really had to be focused on the execution, what the exit plan was, and execute correctly. And that's what we're doing in Gaza. And I think if we hold it together, then we'll have even more credibility around the world. And I'm very confident we will hold it together and we will complete the mission. I also think that what we're trying to do in Gaza with the CMCC where we're bringing a lot of countries together consensually to work with one another. That is the paradigm or the model for what will happen in Ukraine, Russia, when we settle that. And we will settle it. And I think that's probably the most important one to settle next.
Yeah. Let me just finish with Gaza. You know, for some people who look at it and say it's stuck in second gear and it's not moving forward, I know you see things that we don't see. The thought was that these Gulf nations, perhaps other Arab countries, were going to put forces in and then Hamas would disarm eventually. You're saying it is step by step moving that way.
Well, first of all, Hamas has always indicated that they would disarm. They've said so. They've said it to us directly in that famous meeting that Jared had with them. And so I hope that they keep their word, because I think if they do, they'll understand that the development plan that we have for Gaza is really terrific, a lot better than anyone has ever discussed before. How we're going to finance it, aspirational upside for the people to be a part of it, tremendous jobs program. So I think as people begin to see what we're going to do there, I think they're going to be very, very bought in. But that said, and just to explain Hamas's position, we are right in the middle of standing up a decommissioning process of weapons, a demilitarization, an amnesty program. And Hamas has always said that we're going to need the international security force to come in here and be the layer who they give the weapons to. And we haven't finished that yet. That hopefully finishes in the next 3 weeks. And we think that'll be the opportunity, that'll be the inflection point where we see if everyone's going to do as they say they're going to do and demilitarize. And we may even get a look, by the way, in a microcosm sort of way. We may see the model of what we're trying to do here, or what we intend to do here, with these 200 fighters who are trapped in Rafah. And whether they're going to be able to raise their hands, walk out, turn over their weapons. And so this will be one of the tests.
You talk about Russia, Ukraine. You talked about trust and leadership. It seems like people looking from the outside, and maybe on the inside, don't really believe they could trust Russian President Vladimir Putin. You suggest that it is moving forward. What would you say to this group?
Well, I mean, he's never... I've met with him 6 times, and they were, I mean, I don't know that there was a meeting less than 4 hours. In some meetings were as long as 5 hours. And I think it's a tough struggle. I think we have a lot of work to do with regard to security protocols for Ukraine. There's a lot of discussion that technical teams have to have happen at the lower level before the leaders can get to a deal. But I sense that there's some progress today. But I think it's a tough conflict. I think that both sides don't trust each other. And that's a really difficult place to be. It's the same issues we had in Israel. Hamas thinks that Israel will not keep its word, and Israel feels that Hamas will not keep its word. And we had some very, straightforward, blunt conversations with both sides about needing to take the chance. And I am hopeful that in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, people will make bold leadership decisions and take that chance.
What surprised you most about working in government compared to the private sector?
God, I think the private sector was a setup for me. It really was. And New York's a tough place, and it's certainly a tough place to crack into. But we managed to do it, and it was all about hard work. I don't think I took a vacation in the first 3 or 4 years of my professional life. Like, you couldn't find people today who would tell you that. So I think it's about a lot of hard work. And I'm working for a man, Brett, as you know, who has this obsessive, indomitable streak. Nothing satisfies him after you've told him that you've made the deal. And I don't mean that he's not grateful for it. He wants to push on and get the next one done. That's who he is. He just wants to make the world a better place, and it is this constant drive to do that. I remember when we called the president. We said we had a deal, Jared and I, we had a deal in Gaza. And he said, that's wonderful. How are we doing in Russia? And I think that's who you want in a commander-in-chief. And I'm hard driving like that, too. Maybe not as much as him, but you know, his energy level is so powerful, and I was with him yesterday, and he's traveling in here to do this, and then he's going back to do, God knows. I mean, I think my schedule is hectic. It's small compared to his. So he inspires that's why his team is so successful now. First of all, it's a tight team. It's a really loyal team. They're pro him, for him. I tell the president this all the time. And I don't know, it's just one of the I think it's the most blessed experience of my life to be doing what I'm doing.
As you talk to small business owners, entrepreneurs, yesterday Ken Griffin said, hustle. If you can out-hustle, you can beat 90% of the folks who are out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with Ken. Totally. You couldn't say it better, and it's simple, but it's true. Out-hustle. I agree with that. Outwork people. I remember when I got my first job, they told me it started at 8. My father told me to get in at 7. I got in at 7 every single day. And he said to me, never get in the elevator before you know that the boss has gotten in the elevator first. And so out-hustle was the message, and I think you got to do that.
How did the experience representing your country, engaging with leaders across the Middle East, across the world, change your view of leadership, of legacy, of where America stands in the world?
That leadership matters, that one person can matter. Donald Trump's election is so consequential. It changed everything out there. And that tells you how important it is. Policy matters. You look at every one of all of the initiatives that he's doing now. It's all clicking. It's all working out there. And the world is becoming a better and a safer place. And I think government matters. Like I tell my children now, you should think about some sort of civic service. I think it makes you feel a lot better. Makes you feel better about yourself. I think national service, when I go to Israel and I meet these young kids who are all in the military, 18 years old, you're in the military, but they're proud of it. They're serving their country, and I think we would do well with that.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Pardon me?
What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I hope my legacy is that I'm remembered as a good person who tried to do things in the memory of his son. I hope.
Amazing. And last thing is we're talking to this group. You see, when you look at the world, optimism. You are optimistic. You look at the world and say it's changing for the better.
I do. I do. I think Donald Trump, the greatest thing that we did for him, for this country, was to make sure that Donald Trump got elected. And I am, Brett, I go into that Oval Office, and I am in awe of the things that we're working on today. How to drop mortgage rates, how to find peace in the world, how to make sure we initiate tariff policy, because it's given us a lot of leverage out there. On top of that, we're making money. Just how to make the world a better place. He's interested in fixing everything. We can't fix everything, but we're going to try. And I think that's the sort of president that we have. We have someone who's going to use his power to try everywhere he can.
And he makes decisions pretty quickly. I mean, it is a bunch of people, but when the decision's made, it's made.
You know, I think, Brett, not only does he make decisions, when I say quickly, I don't mean without thought. I mean, if we're sitting in the room, the two of us together, You may not be a member of the administration, but he's got great respect for you, so he'll ask you your opinion, as you know. And he might ask me my opinion, and he'll make a decision. And it's possible it's not the perfect decision, but he doesn't stumble because of that. Then he goes on to make another decision that's going to be the perfect decision. My point is, he knows that sometimes we're not going to get it perfectly, but he just keeps on knocking at the door. And invariably, he gets it right. So it's pretty remarkable for me to watch.
And world leaders, how do they look at him?
They're blown away. Blown away. In the Arab world, there's huge respect for him. You know, people respect power there. They respect fortitude. They respect people keeping their word, like not coming in and out. That's who he is. I think Vladimir Putin completely respects him. I think this trip that he made to the Southeast Asia shows you that Xi respects him, and they respect the fact that he'll do things to enforce America First policies. They can't circumvent us anymore. I think they all respect us.
And if you, in these decisions where you're making these peace deals, what do you take away from that negotiation and how to get it across the finish line? When you're in the heat of the battle, going down to the nitty-gritty, what's the best trick to be able to get there?
Well, you know, Jared and I, in the last several days of the Gaza negotiation, we both had there was no space between us on what we needed to do. You can't make a good deal unless it's good for each side. And even if someone signs a bad deal, he'll be intent on breaking the bad deal. So it was our job to find how both sides could digest and sell to their constituencies the deal that we were trying to make there. We had, I say it all the time, we had to convince Hamas that those hostages were no longer an asset for them. Those hostages had become a liability. And I think as we became successful in them appreciating that, that was the inflection point that led to the deal. And I think the same thing is going to happen at some point in Russia-Ukraine, that both sides will get to a place where they understand that solving that conflict kinetically is bad for them long term, either of them, that it should be solved diplomatically. And then they can both grow their countries.
So as you're sitting at that table, you're trying to get something that they both agree on. You're trying to take the conversation. I mean, it can be pretty awkward.
Yeah, yeah. And give them examples of examples give them historical context about why to do things like that. Why compromise at this moment might be the smart thing to do. Why someone being the bigger man might be a great example. Here's a small example of what I mean. When we did this whole deal at the president's direction with Azerbaijan and Armenia, these countries had been fighting for close to 40 years. And President Aliyev came in. His father was the former president, and he's got the much superior army. He took his moment to take back some land from Armenia. And we were sitting in the Oval Office, and the president asked the President Aliyev, while the president of Armenia was there, why did you stop? Like, you had them on the run. You've got the bigger military. What made you stop? And he said, because that's all I wanted back, was what they took. I didn't need more. And it was an amazing decision on his part to do that, Brad. He felt that going any further would hurt him internationally. It was an example of statesmanship. And I think that those are wonderful examples for conflicts out there where leaders should understand that they do better if they resolve things diplomatically, peacefully, with less loss of life than kinetically, and show everybody how big and tough their army is.
You've been in the room for a lot of this, but there's been Armenia, Azerbaijan, Congo, Rwanda, India, Pakistan, Israel, Hamas, and this Gaza deal. Mm-hmm. There are others that the president is figuring out how those sides deal with each other.
Yes.
What's the secret sauce? Are they all different?
Well, they all have different circumstances. Yeah, they do. But, you know, today we saw an offer for a ceasefire and big aid coming into Sudan from one of the groups that's fighting there. That's at the president's urging. That's something, by the way, that nobody knows about. That's hot off the press.
Okay,
So,
breaking news.
And I think that's an example of a conflict where the president is urging it to stop and people are paying attention and listening. Now, I don't know if in the past our prior foreign policy teams did all of these things. He wants it all solved. That's who he is. And, you know, we then go out there and we want to get it done for him and for the American people.
When he was campaigning, he was not, you know, peacemaker in chief, but he has kind of taken that title in how he's negotiated.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's, first of all, I think he's always been a great human being. He just doesn't get the credit for it, and he should. And I talk about it all the time. He should. Now, I don't mean with a Nobel Peace Prize. Certainly, he got cheated out of the Nobel Peace Prize this year. That's for sure. But I mean, there could be no doubt. I don't even know how you would. I mean, the woman who got it actually said, "I should give it to you, sir." But forgetting about the Peace Prize, he is a good, decent man. He doesn't need to do this job. He's wealthy. He could get a big boat, travel in the Mediterranean in the summer, go to St. Bart's in the winter. Instead, he goes to his office every day and figures out how he can do better. I think that's quite remarkable. And it makes me really proud to work for him.
How long do you think you could keep this pace up, though? This job that you are right now, I've seen you on the phone, I've seen you get on planes, get off planes, travel around the world. Keep it going for how long?
Personally?
Yeah.
As long as he would want me to.
You like it that much?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that would make my girlfriend happy, who's in the audience. By the way, it was her birthday yesterday, so I say happy birthday.
That? Happy birthday, Lauren.
But yeah, I don't know that I've ever felt this fulfilled in my life. I feel really fulfilled that I get to do this job. It's an extraordinary experience. And you and I have talked about this. Maybe one day you're going to want to do something like this, Brett.
I don't know. You can take the baton. It is passion, though, right? And would you say that when you find the passion, it makes a difference?
Well, you know, I get these calls from people who say, "You made my life just a little bit better." And then I go into the Oval and I watch some of these hostages come out and tell the president what it was like for them. I remember when we got Mark Fogel home. He was in
Russia.
He was in Russia. We came in a snowstorm. He called his 93-year-old mom from the plane, elated. She had no idea. And then the president spent 2 hours with him at 1 o'clock in the morning, showing him the Lincoln Room, talking to him about his experiences. He turned to me, he said to me, "I didn't know I had a president like this. I didn't know that I had a government that cared about me this much." And you watch that, and you want to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm. So that's what you're striving for, another one of those, another breakthrough.
Well, no, I don't mean, I think we're striving to complete whatever President Trump tells us the mission is. We're trying to complete that. Mm-hmm. And I think when we can't get it done on his schedule, I think we all feel that we failed a little bit. And then he keeps on propping us up and saying to us, "Go on, get out there. Go do it." He's an inspirational guy.
Last thing, taking it back to the beginning, as you look at your business life and you look at this life, you said you'd give it all up to see those images of hostages coming home to their families. What's the next chapter for you?
Well, I'm never going to go back to business the way I did. First of all, it was time for me anyway. I've got very capable kids. They're bright, super well educated. They're very, very close. And so that's for them to do now. They can watch after me a little bit. And I think I'll try to do, I think now that I've felt what it's like to give of yourself, I think I want to do it more. And even after the administration or whenever it is that I leave, that's where I think my life will take me.
Well, Steve, we appreciate your service to the country, and thank you for being here at America Business
Thanks, Fred.
Forum.
Thank you.
Steve Witkoff, everybody.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
PIF is one of the world's largest and fastest growing sovereign wealth funds. The United States is PIF's most important market outside of Saudi Arabia. Since 2017, PIF has directed $170 billion into the U.S. economy, fueling growth, creating opportunities,